You're all of them. And it's disgusting.
Preston Caldwell shoved his wine glass so hard it shattered across the white tablecloth. 300 guests at his charity gala turned. He was pointing at Brianna Moore, the only black server on the floor. She didn't flinch. Tray steady, spine straight. He stepped closer.
You think you can just touch my wine?
The glass was polished before service, sir.
Get out of my sight. You make me sick.
A few guests gasped. Most looked away, forks frozen, eyes down. But what Preston Caldwell didn't know was that the waitress he just called an animal had something cold and gold beneath her uniform. And the moment she flashed it, that grin of his would disappear for good. Damn! But to understand what happened next, you need to know who this woman really was. But let me take you back. 6 hours before that glass shattered, Brianna Moore's morning started in a one-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia. Nothing fancy. A second-hand couch with a blanket thrown over the armrest. A coffee maker gurgling on the kitchen counter. The smell of cocoa butter and fresh ironed cotton filling the air. She stood at the ironing board, pressing a plain white server's blouse. Slow, careful strokes. Steam curling up past her chin. On the counter behind her sat an FBI credentials wallet, gold badge, photo ID, half hidden beneath a grocery receipt. She picked it up, ran her thumb across the seal, and tucked it into a concealed pouch inside her waistband. Brianna was 32, Spelman College graduate, 6 years in the FBI's white-collar crime division. She had taken down Ponzi operators, embezzlement rings, and corporate fraudsters who thought their money made them untouchable. Tonight was her biggest assignment yet. Her phone buzzed. Mom. "Hey, baby, how's that new catering job going?" Brianna smiled. Her mother, Lorraine Moore, retired schoolteacher from Richmond, still thought her daughter was picking up weekend shifts for extra cash. Brianna hadn't told her the truth. Couldn't. Not yet. "It's good, Mama. Just ironing my uniform now." Lorraine paused. "You sound tired. You eaten enough?" "Yes, Mama." "All right. Just remember, you don't owe anybody your dignity. You hear me?" Brianna closed her eyes. "I hear you." She hung up, clipped the earpiece to her collar, slid the blouse on, looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Plain white shirt, black slacks, hair pulled back tight. Nobody special, just another server. That was the whole point. Tonight, Brianna Moore was going undercover at the Caldwell Sterling Industries annual charity gala to collect the final evidence in a 14-month federal investigation. The target? A $250 million defense contracting fraud. The man at the center of it all? Preston Caldwell. The Grand Athenian Hotel sat on K Street in Washington, D.C., the kind of address where power has its own zip code. By 7 that evening, the ballroom was alive. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings. A 40-piece orchestra played soft jazz in the corner. Champagne towers rose 6 feet tall, catching light like liquid gold. Orchid centerpieces on every table. Gold-rimmed plates. Valet Parkers and white gloves lining the entrance. The guest list read like a who's who of American power. Senators, defense contractors, lobbyists, media executives. The narrator notes, this was the kind of room where a handshake could move $100 million and a whisper could sink a career. Brianna had been embedded with the outside catering company for 2 weeks. Terrence Cole, head of the catering staff, liked her. She was quiet, fast, reliable. Never late, never complained. He had no idea who she really was. She moved through the ballroom with a tray of sparkling water, invisible in the way that service workers always are to people with money. Pouring glasses, clearing plates, listening. Then he walked in.
Preston Caldwell. Mid-50s, silver temples, a three-piece charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. He moved through the crowd like he owned every square inch, which, for tonight, he basically did. Shaking hands like he was granting audiences, smiling with teeth that looked bought and paid for. His wife, Vanessa Caldwell, trailed 2 steps behind. Blonde, thin, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She waved at guests the way a queen waves from a balcony. Practiced, distant. Preston stopped at a table near Brianna. He leaned toward Vanessa and said something low, but not low enough. "I told Amelia no diversity hires on the floor tonight. This is a prestige event." Vanessa laughed softly, a small, knowing laugh. The kind that says, "I agree, but I'd never say it out loud." Brianna's hand didn't tremble. She kept pouring water. Steady stream. Steady breath. But in her ear, a voice crackled. S.S.A. Danelle Harris, her handler, sitting in a surveillance van 2 blocks away. "Copy that, Brianna. We're recording." The gala had barely started, and already Preston Caldwell was showing exactly who he was. Cocktail hour hit its stride around 8:15. The ballroom hummed with low conversation, clinking crystal, and the soft brass of the orchestra. Waiters moved like shadows between tables, refilling, clearing, disappearing. Brianna was assigned to the East Wing. 6 tables, 48 guests. Standard rotation, water, wine, bread, clear. She had done it 100 times in 2 weeks. Muscle memory by now. Then the floor manager redirected her. "More! VIP section needs a hand! Table 1, go!" Table 1. Preston Caldwell's table. She picked up a fresh bottle of Bordeaux and walked over. Calm steps, controlled breathing. She approached from Preston's left side, tilted the bottle at the proper angle, and began to pour. Preston didn't look at her. He was mid-conversation with a gray-haired man in a navy suit, some defense contractor laughing too hard at a joke that wasn't funny. But when the wine hit the glass, Preston's eyes flicked sideways. He saw her hand, then her face. He pulled the glass away before she finished pouring. Not from her. He said it the way you'd refuse food from a stray dog. Flat, disgusted, final. The gray-haired man went quiet. 2 women across the table exchanged a glance. Preston raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Actually, snapped them at Amelia Dawson, the event coordinator, who was hovering near the champagne tower with a clipboard. "Amelia, get me a different server, preferably one who doesn't look like she wandered in off the street." Amelia's face flushed pink. She rushed over, heels clicking on the marble floor, and placed herself between Preston and Brianna like a human shield. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell. I'm so sorry. Brianna, could you maybe cover the back stations for a while?" Brianna looked at Amelia, then at Preston. His jaw was set, his eyes already somewhere else. Back to the gray-haired man, back to the joke, back to the world where Brianna didn't exist. "Yes, ma'am," Brianna said. She turned and walked toward the kitchen corridor. Smooth steps. No rush. Tray balanced. Face blank. But here's what nobody in that room understood. The kitchen corridor wasn't a demotion. It was exactly where Brianna needed to be.
12 feet from that hallway sat a private office. Preston's personal suite inside the hotel, the one he used during gala events for donor meetings and phone calls. And the door was 6 inches ajar. In her ear, Harris spoke. "Nice pivot. You're in position. Take what you can get." Brianna set her tray on a service cart, glanced left, glanced right. The hallway was empty. Kitchen noise covered her footsteps, clattering dishes, shouting chefs, the roar of an industrial dishwasher. She slipped through the door. The office smelled like leather and old cigars. A mahogany desk sat against the far wall, covered in folders, a laptop, and a half-empty tumbler of scotch. Brianna moved fast. She pulled a pen camera from her apron pocket, standard bureau issue, looks like a ballpoint, and began photographing. Invoices. Dozens of them. Defense Department contract headers with billing amounts that didn't match the work described. One invoice alone showed $14 million for consulting services that, according to the Bureau's forensic accountants, never happened. Another billed $9 million for equipment that was never delivered. She photographed 12 documents in 90 seconds, transmitted them through an encrypted channel built into the pen's Bluetooth chip. In the van, Harris received each image in real time. "Beautiful. That's gold, Brianna. Get out clean." She slipped back into the corridor, picked up her tray, and reappeared on the service floor like she'd never left. 30 seconds. Nobody noticed. Nobody except Preston Caldwell. 20 minutes later, Brianna was handing her event lanyard to Terrence Cole near the staff entrance. Terrence wouldn't look her in the eye. What happened was this. Preston had found Terrence near the bar, grabbed him by the elbow and said, not asked, said, "That black girl, I want her badge pulled. She's done for the night." Terrence tried. He really did. "Mr. Caldwell, she's one of my best workers. She hasn't done anything wrong." Preston leaned in. His voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that powerful men use when they want you to understand the threat without hearing it spelled out. "You work for me tonight. Handle it, or I'll find a caterer who understands client relations." Terrence found Brianna near the dessert station. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were on the floor. "Brianna, Look, I need you to turn in your lanyard. I'm sorry. He wants you off the floor." "Did he say why?"
Terrence swallowed.
"You know why."
Brianna unclipped the lanyard slowly. "Can I get 5 minutes? I left my jacket in the locker area." Yeah, take 5. She handed him the lanyard. Their fingers touched for a second. His were shaking. Hers were steady. But Preston wasn't satisfied with removing her quietly. That wasn't enough. He needed a show.
Brianna was walking back across the ballroom, headed for the staff exit. Done. Compliant. Silent. When Preston spotted her from across the room, he set down his champagne flute, straightened his cufflinks, and walked directly toward her. Every step was deliberate. Every step was a performance. He reached her in the middle of the dance floor, under the biggest chandelier, maximum visibility. And he grabbed the lanyard, the one Terrence had already collected, right off the service cart where Terrence had set it down. He held it up like a trophy. "This is exactly why I vet every vendor personally," he announced. Not to Brianna, to the room. His voice carried over the music, over the conversation, over everything. "You let people in who don't belong and standards collapse every single time." He looked at Brianna, waiting for her to break, waiting for tears, waiting for the scene he wanted, the angry black woman, the one who confirms every ugly story he tells himself. Brianna looked back at him, calm, still, unbroken. "I'm sorry you feel that way, sir." Preston sneered. "Feel? I don't feel. I know." He tossed the lanyard on the floor at her feet and walked away. The room was frozen. 300 people holding their breath. Forks down. Conversations dead. Then one voice broke the silence. An elderly white woman at table 9, silver hair, pearl earrings, a face that said she'd seen enough in her 80-something years to know wrong when it stood right in front of her, pushed her chair back and stood up. That was completely uncalled for. Her voice was clear, steady. It cut through the room like a bell. Preston turned. He looked at her the way you look at a fly on your windshield. Mild annoyance. Nothing more. He waved his hand, a lazy, dismissive flick of the wrist, and kept walking. The elderly woman stayed standing for a long moment. Then she sat down. Alone. 300 people in that ballroom. 300 of the most powerful, educated, connected people in Washington, D.C. And only one had the spine to say something. Brianna picked the lanyard up off the floor. Not because she needed it, because she didn't leave messes behind. In her ear, Harris's voice was tight. "We got all of that, Brianna. Audio and visual. Stay and play. We're not done yet." She wasn't done. Not even close. 2 blocks east of the Grand Athenian Hotel, a black surveillance van sat parked between a dry cleaner and a Thai restaurant. No markings, tinted windows, engine off. Inside, SSA Donald Harris sat in front of 3 monitors. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. A half-eaten sandwich sat next to his keyboard, forgotten. Beside him, Agent Russell Webb adjusted a headset and zoomed a feed from a camera concealed inside a smoke detector in the hotel's VIP lounge. Harris had been running this case for 14 months. 14 months of subpoenas, shell company traces, offshore banking records, and dead ends that turned into new leads that turned into more dead ends. The Caldwell-Sterling fraud was one of the largest defense contracting scams the Bureau had seen in a decade. $250 million billed to the Department of Defense for services and equipment that never existed. And Brianna Moore had done in 2 weeks what the rest of the team couldn't do in a year. She'd gotten inside the room. Harris pressed his earpiece. "Brianna, status." "Off the floor. He pulled my lanyard. I'm near the staff exit." "Copy. Listen, he just committed assault on camera when he snatched that lanyard. We could move now. But I need more. I need Cliff Norton on tape. The CFO is the key to the Cayman accounts." Silence for a beat. Then Brianna. "What do you need me to do?" "Get back on that floor. VIP lounge. Norton and Caldwell are scheduled for a private meeting at 9:15. If we can get Norton talking about the offshore transfers, we lock this case shut tonight. He just threw me out in front of 300 people, Harris. I know. That's why no one will expect you to come back." Brianna leaned against the corridor wall, closed her eyes, took 1 breath, 2. She thought about her mother's voice. "You don't owe anybody your dignity." No, she didn't. But she owed something to every taxpayer whose money Preston Caldwell had stolen. She owed something to every soldier who used equipment that was never properly funded because the budget went into Preston's pocket. "I'm going back in. That's my agent. Dessert service starts at 9. Terrence Cole is your way in. He felt guilty about pulling your lanyard. Use that." Brianna found Terrence in the kitchen.
He was leaning against the walk-in cooler, rubbing his forehead. The guilt was written across his face like a headline. "Terrence?" He looked up. "Brianna, look, I'm sorry about what happened out there. That man is... I shouldn't have... It's okay. I need a favor. Anything. Let me back on the floor for dessert service. 30 minutes. That's all I need." Terrence shook his head slowly. "If he sees you again, he won't notice me. I'll stay in the VIP lounge, in and out." Terrence stared at her for a long moment. Then he opened a supply cabinet, pulled out a fresh uniform shirt, crisp, white, still in plastic, and handed it to her. "I shouldn't have let him do that to you. I'm sorry." Brianna took the shirt. "You're making it right now." She changed in the staff bathroom. New shirt, hair retucked, earpiece secure, the pen camera back in her apron pocket. She picked up a dessert tray, 6 plates of creme brulee with gold leaf arranged in a perfect circle, and walked through the kitchen doors. The VIP lounge was separated from the main ballroom by a velvet curtain and 2 security guards who checked lanyards. Brianna didn't have hers anymore. But Terrence had called ahead, told the guards she was covering for a sick colleague. They waved her through. The lounge was smaller, darker. Leather couches, a private bar with a single bartender. Maybe 30 guests, all high-tier donors. The air smelled like expensive cologne and old money. And there, in a corner booth, half hidden by a potted palm, sat Preston Caldwell and Cliff Norton. Norton was Preston's CFO, late 40s, thin, nervous energy. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and kept adjusting them every few seconds like a tick. He was the numbers man, the one who built the spreadsheets, created the shell companies, and routed the money. If Preston was the face of the fraud, Norton was the spine. Brianna positioned herself at the service station, 6 feet from their booth. Close enough to hear. Close enough for the pen camera's microphone to pick up every word. Norton was talking fast, low voice, fingers tapping the table. "The Defense Department audit is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Preston. We need to move the Cayman accounts before they freeze the assets." Preston sipped his scotch. Calm. "Already handled. I've got Senator." He stopped, mid-sentence. His eyes had drifted to the right. He saw Brianna. For a second, nothing moved. Preston's glass hung in the air. Norton followed his gaze. The background noise of the lounge seemed to drop away. Then Preston's face went red. Not embarrassed red, furious red. The kind of red that starts at the collar and crawls up the neck like a rash. He stood up. The booth table shuddered. "You. Again." Brianna kept her eyes on the dessert tray. "Just delivering the course, sir." "I told them to get rid of you. Are you deaf or just that stupid?" He crossed the space between them in 2 steps. His hand shot out and shoved the dessert tray. Hard. Creme brulee slid off the plates. Caramel sauce and custard splattered down the front of Brianna's fresh white shirt. Gold leaf stuck to her apron like confetti at the worst party in the world. Norton flinched. A woman on a nearby couch gasped. Preston didn't even blink. He turned back to Norton and laughed, a short, ugly bark. "See, this is what I'm talking about. You can't trust these people with anything. Not a glass of wine, not a dessert plate, nothing." Then Vanessa appeared. She walked into the lounge like she had radar for her husband's worst moments. She looked at Brianna, custard dripping from her uniform, standing perfectly still, and shook her head. "Preston, just have security remove her.
Don't waste your energy.
She turned to Brianna, tilted her head. That smile again, the one that never reaches the eyes. Sweetie, this isn't the place for you. Brianna looked at Vanessa, looked at the custard on her shirt, looked at Preston, who was already snapping his fingers at the lounge entrance. Security, get in here, now! 2 private security guards appeared. Big guys, earpieces, black suits. They walked toward Brianna with that slow, deliberate pace that's designed to intimidate. Preston pointed at Brianna's handbag on the service cart. Escort her out, and check her bag. I wouldn't be surprised if silverware's missing. The first guard reached for her bag. Brianna pulled it back, firm, controlled. You don't have the right to search me. Preston stepped forward. In my venue, I have every right. No, sir, you don't. The second guard hesitated. He looked at his partner. Something about the way this woman spoke, calm, precise, like she'd said these words 1,000 times before, made him pause. Preston didn't pause. Open the bag, now, or I'm calling the police and reporting a theft. The room was watching. 30 people in the VIP lounge. Every eye on Brianna. Custard on her shirt. 2 guards in her face. A billionaire threatening to have her arrested for a crime she didn't commit. And in the surveillance van, Harris gripped the edge of his desk. Hold, Brianna, hold. We have Norton on tape. We have the Cayman accounts. We have everything we need. He took a breath. Green light is yours whenever you're ready. Oh, hell no. Nah, I need y'all to really picture this. You're standing there, custard dripping down your shirt, 2 guards in your face, 300 people watching. And nobody says a word. What would you do? Because Brianna, she's about to flip this whole room upside down. The security guard reached for her bag a second time. His fingers were inches from the strap. Brianna didn't step back. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look at Preston or Vanessa or the 30 people watching from their leather couches. She looked at the guard, straight in his eyes, and she said one word. Don't. Something in her voice made him freeze. Not loud, not angry, just certain. The kind of certain that comes from someone who knows exactly what's about to happen next. Brianna reached behind her back, not into the bag, not into her apron, into the concealed pouch inside her waistband, the one she'd prepared that morning in her Alexandria apartment, standing at the ironing board, steam curling past her chin. She pulled out a credentials wallet, black leather, gold seal. She flipped it open and held it high enough for the chandelier light to catch it. The badge gleamed. The words across the top read, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Below them, her photo, her name, her title. She spoke clearly, not shouting, not whispering, just loud enough for every person in that lounge to hear every syllable. Special Agent Brianna Moore, FBI White Collar Crime Division. Mr. Caldwell, step away from me. Now! The room didn't gasp. It didn't murmur. It just stopped. Like someone had pulled the plug on the entire universe. The bartender's hand froze on a cocktail shaker. A woman on the far couch set her champagne down so slowly it took 3 full seconds. Norton's glasses slid down his nose, and he didn't push them back. And Preston Caldwell, the man who had spent the entire evening performing power like it was a sport, stood completely still. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. The smug grin was gone. Not fading, gone, like it had been surgically removed. His face drained, not just pale, gray, the color of old concrete, His eyes blinked 3 times fast, and when they opened the last time, they were the eyes of a man who had just realized he was standing on the edge of a cliff he didn't see coming. He whispered, "What?" Brianna didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. She pressed 2 fingers to her wrist mic. Her voice was calm, professional. The same tone she'd used to say, "The glass was polished before service, sir." Except now it carried the full weight of the United States federal government behind it. "Harris, green light. Bring them in." For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The main ballroom doors swung open. 4 agents in dark tactical vests walked through the entrance in formation. 2 more came through the kitchen, the same kitchen where Brianna had changed her shirt 20 minutes ago. Another 3 entered from the service corridor, and 3 more appeared from the hotel's side entrance near the valet station. 12 FBI agents, moving fast, moving quiet, spreading through the room like a net closing. Guests scrambled, chairs scraped against marble. A champagne flute hit the floor and shattered. Someone screamed, short, sharp, then silence. Adonal Harris walked through the Vibe Lounge curtain. Tall, steady, badge on his belt. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He walked directly to Preston Caldwell and stopped 3 feet in front of him. "Preston Caldwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit federal contracting fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Preston's mouth was still open. No words came out. 2 agents flanked him. One reached for his wrist. Preston pulled back, instinct, but there was nowhere to go. The handcuffs clicked shut. Cold steel on a wrist that had been wearing a $40,000 watch 5 seconds earlier. Across the lounge, Cliff Norton saw it happen. He set his scotch glass down very carefully, stood up, and started walking toward the restroom. Casual, measured, like he was just going to wash his hands. Agent Webb was waiting in the corridor. Norton made it 4 steps before Webb stepped in front of him. "Mr. Norton, going somewhere?" Norton's face crumbled. His shoulders dropped. He didn't resist. The cuffs went on without a word. And then, Vanessa. She had been standing near the lounge entrance, watching her husband get handcuffed like it was a scene from someone else's life. When a female agent approached her to ask her to remain on the premises, Vanessa's composure finally cracked. She clutched her pearl necklace, actually clutched it, both hands, and her voice came out in a pitch that could shatter crystal. "Do you know who we are?" The agent didn't blink, didn't flinch, just looked at her with the flattest expression Brianna had ever seen on another human being. "Yes, ma'am. That's why we're here." The ballroom was chaos now. Phones were out everywhere, 300 screens glowing, videos recording from every angle. The orchestra had stopped mid-note, a saxophone fading out like a dying breath. The elderly woman at table 9, the one who had stood up alone, the only person in the room who had said, "That was completely uncalled for," caught Brianna's eye from across the room. She didn't speak. She just nodded. Slow, deep. A nod that said, "I knew." I didn't know what, but I knew. Amelia Dawson stood frozen near the champagne tower, clipboard pressed against her chest, mouth open so wide you could see her fillings. And Terrence Cole, standing in the kitchen doorway, dish towel over his shoulder, watched the whole thing unfold. His eyes went wide, then his jaw dropped. Then, slowly, quietly, he shook his head and smiled. The kind of smile that comes when the world finally makes sense. Brianna peeled off the stained uniform shirt. Underneath, a plain black tee. She unclipped the badge from the wallet and fastened it to her belt. Then she walked through the VIP lounge, past the leather couches, past the champagne, past every person who had watched her get humiliated and done nothing. Her shoulders were back. Her spine was straight. Custard stains still on her apron. Gold badge on her hip. Nobody looked away this time. The FBI field office on Pennsylvania Avenue was quiet at 11 p.m. Fluorescent lights, gray walls, the smell of stale coffee and printer ink. A different world from crystal chandeliers and champagne towers. Preston Caldwell sat in interview room C. His charcoal three-piece suit was wrinkled now. His silver cufflinks had been placed in an evidence bag, along with his watch, his phone, and his wallet. He looked 10 years older than he had 3 hours ago. He started with rage.
This is entrapment. You planted that woman in my event. My lawyers will bury your entire agency. I will personally make sure every single one of you loses your badge.
Harris sat across from him, hands folded, face blank. He let Preston finish. Then he opened a manila folder and slid 12 photographs across the table. The invoices Brianna had captured from the private office. These are falsified invoices billed to the Department of Defense. 14 million here, 9 million here. This one, 22 million for consulting services that our forensic accountants confirmed never took place. Preston looked at the photos. His jaw tightened. Harris kept going. He pulled a USB drive from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. This is the audio recording from Agent Moore's wire. At 9:18 tonight, your CFO, Cliff Norton, was captured on tape discussing the movement of funds to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands ahead of a Defense Department audit. You were seated across from him. You responded. We have every word. Preston's attorney, a silver-haired man in a pinstripe suit who had arrived 20 minutes earlier, leaned over and whispered something in his client's ear. Preston shook his head.
She was just a waitress, Preston said. His voice had changed. The authority was gone. What was left sounded hollow, thin. She was nobody. Harris leaned back in his chair. He looked at Preston for a long moment. She's the agent who built a 14-month case against you. She infiltrated your organization, gathered evidence inside your own office, and recorded your CFO confessing to money laundering, all while you were busy trying to humiliate her in front of your friends. She's the furthest thing from nobody, Mr. Caldwell. She's the reason you're sitting in that chair. Preston's attorney put a hand on his client's arm. Preston, stop talking. But Preston couldn't stop. His mouth kept moving like a machine with a broken switch. I want to speak with Senator... He caught himself, closed his mouth. But Harris had already written the half-sentence down. 2 floors below, Cliff Norton was having a very different conversation. Norton had been in the system before. A securities fraud charge 8 years ago that got pled down to a fine. He knew how this worked. He knew what 30-plus years in federal prison looked like, and he knew that the first person to cooperate gets the best deal. It took him less than 2 hours. By 1 a.m., Norton had signed a cooperation agreement. He gave the Bureau access to encrypted files on a private server in Virginia. He provided account numbers for 3 offshore entities in the Cayman Islands and 1 in Zurich. He identified the routing paths for $250 million in fraudulent payments.
and he named names, including a sitting United States senator who had received kickbacks in exchange for steering defense contracts toward Caldwell Sterling. Harris read the list of names. He looked at Webb. Webb looked back. "This thing just got a lot bigger," Webb said. Harris nodded. "It always does." Upstairs, Preston sat alone in interview room C. His attorney had stepped out to make calls. The door was closed. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He stared at the wall. The arrogance was gone. The performance was over. By morning, it would get worse. Vanessa Caldwell was not arrested that night. But at 7:15 a.m., a federal agent knocked on the door of the Caldwell residence in Georgetown and handed her a subpoena. Bank records showed that Vanessa had personally signed wire transfers totaling $38 million to the Cayman accounts. Her signature, her initials, her authorization codes. By noon, the gala footage had gone viral. Someone, probably multiple someones, had uploaded video from the ballroom. The clip of Preston shattering the wine glass, the clip of him calling Brianna an animal, the clip of Vanessa tilting her head and saying, "Sweetie, this isn't the place for you." That last one hit different. It became the headline. It became the hashtag. Hashtag, not the place for you, trended for 72 straight hours. Vanessa's social media accounts, previously a curated gallery of charity galas, philanthropic brunches, and designer outfits tagged with hashtag blessed, were flooded. Thousands of comments, tens of thousands, not kind ones. Her country club suspended her membership by Tuesday. 3 charity boards requested her resignation by Wednesday. Her personal publicist quit on Thursday. The dominoes were falling, and every single one of them had Preston Caldwell's name on it. The story hit the news cycle like a freight train. Every major outlet ran it. The headlines wrote themselves. CEO arrested at own charity gala by undercover FBI agent he tried to fire. Black waitress was FBI, and she just took down a $250 million fraud ring. He called her an animal. She had a badge. The images were everywhere. Preston in handcuffs, still wearing his 3-piece suit. Vanessa clutching her pearls, mouth open mid-scream. Norton being led out through the kitchen, head down, glasses crooked. And Brianna, caught in one blurry phone video, walking through the ballroom with her badge on her belt, custard still on her apron. That frame became the image of the week. Someone turned it into a mural in Southeast D.C. within 48 hours. 3 days after the arrest, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia held a press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse. Cameras everywhere. Microphones stacked 3 deep. The charges were laid out in precise, devastating detail. 14 counts. Conspiracy to commit federal contracting fraud. Wire fraud, 11 separate counts. Money laundering. Obstruction of justice. Each count carried its own maximum sentence. Added together, Preston Caldwell was looking at a potential lifetime behind bars. The U.S. Attorney spoke for 12 minutes. She described a scheme that had been running for nearly 6 years, a network of shell companies, falsified invoices, inflated contracts, and offshore accounts designed to siphon $250 million from the Department of Defense. Money that was supposed to fund equipment for American soldiers. Money that instead bought Preston Caldwell a yacht, a vineyard in Napa, a penthouse in Miami, and a private art collection worth more than most towns' annual budgets. Brianna was not named publicly, standard FBI protocol for undercover agents. But the gala footage had already made her an open secret. Social media didn't need a press conference. They had the video. They had the badge. they had the moment. Hashtag Agent Brianna trended for 3 straight days. Fan accounts appeared overnight. A clip of the elderly woman at table 9, the one who had stood up and said, "That was completely uncalled for," went viral on its own. Someone tracked her down. Her name was Margaret. She was 84, a retired school teacher, just like Brianna's mother. 4 months later, the trial began. Federal Courthouse, Washington, D.C. Judge Eleanor Foster presiding. Foster was known for 2 things: impeccable legal reasoning and 0 tolerance for theatrics. She had presided over corruption cases involving governors, military contractors, and once a sitting congressman. She did not suffer fools. The prosecution's case was surgical. 14 months of investigation compressed into 2 weeks of testimony. First, the documents. The falsified invoices Brianna had photographed in Preston's private office. Each one blown up on a screen for the jury to see. Line items that didn't match. Services that were never performed. Equipment that was never delivered. Dollar amounts that added up to $250 million. Second, the audio. The recording from Brianna's wire. Norton's voice, clear as a church bell. "We need to move the Cayman accounts before they freeze the assets." And Preston's reply, cut short but damning. "Already handled. I've got Senator." Third, Norton himself, the cooperating witness. He sat on the stand for a full day. Wire-rimmed glasses, gray suit, hands steady now. Steadier than they'd been in the lounge that night. He walked the jury through every shell company, every routing number, every fraudulent invoice. He explained how the scheme worked, how they overbilled the Defense Department, funneled the excess through offshore accounts, and laundered it back through legitimate-looking investments. The defense tried everything. They argued entrapment, that the FBI had deliberately planted an agent to exploit Preston's behavior. Judge Foster shut it down. The evidence was gathered pursuant to a valid warrant and established undercover protocols. They tried to discredit Brianna. The defense attorney stood up during cross-examination, adjusted his tie, and asked the question he clearly thought was his knockout punch. "Agent Moore, isn't it true that you deliberately manipulated my client's racial prejudices to gain access to restricted areas of the event?" The courtroom went still. Brianna sat in the witness chair. She was wearing a navy blue suit now. No apron, no tray, no custard stains. She looked at the defense attorney the same way she had looked at Preston that night. Steady, unblinking, absolutely certain. "I didn't manipulate his prejudices. I walked into the room as a black woman. His prejudices did the rest." The courtroom stirred. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Someone in the back row whispered, "Oh my God." Judge Foster didn't need to call for order. The silence came back on its own, like the room was holding its breath. The defense attorney had no follow-up. He sat down. Preston took the stand against his attorney's advice. It was a disaster. He was combative, dismissive, and at one point referred to Brianna as "that girl." Judge Foster stopped the proceedings, removed the jury, and reprimanded him directly. "Mr. Caldwell, you will refer to the witness by her name and title. She is Special Agent Moore. If you cannot manage basic courtesy in my courtroom, I will hold you in contempt. Are we clear?" Preston nodded. But the damage was done. The jury had seen exactly who he was. Again. Deliberations lasted 4 hours and 42 minutes. Guilty. All 14 counts. 6 weeks later, Preston Caldwell stood for sentencing. No 3-piece suit this time. Orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him. The courtroom was packed, media in every row, cameras at every angle. Judge Foster read her remarks from a prepared statement. Her voice was calm, measured, every word chosen with the precision of a surgeon. Mr. Caldwell, you defrauded the United States government, and, by extension, every taxpayer in this country of $250 million. You did so with arrogance. You did so with contempt for the institutions that trusted you. And when confronted, you responded not with accountability, but with cruelty, directed at the very agent who uncovered your crimes. She paused, looked at him over her reading glasses. This court sentences you to 22 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets derived from criminal activity, and restitution in the full amount of $250 million. The gavel came down. Preston was led away in handcuffs. No smirk, no silver cufflinks, no champagne. Just orange fabric and the sound of shackles on a polished floor. Cliff Norton received 8 years under his cooperation agreement. It could have been worse. He knew it. Vanessa Caldwell, facing evidence of her direct involvement in the wire transfers, pleaded guilty to accessory charges. 3 years in federal prison. Her attorney released a written statement calling it a difficult time for the family. Nobody felt sorry. Caldwell Sterling Industries was dissolved. 1,200 employees lost their jobs. Most of them had nothing to do with the fraud. A victims' restitution fund was established to compensate the Defense Department and provide severance to affected workers. The unnamed senator resigned 2 weeks after the verdict. A separate DOJ investigation was already underway. No one was surprised. A documentary crew announced a project about the case. They reached out to Brianna for an interview. She declined. No statement, no explanation, just no. The narrator notes, sometimes justice isn't poetic. It isn't cinematic. It doesn't come with a soundtrack or a slow-motion walk. Sometimes justice is a 14-count indictment, a 4-hour jury deliberation, and a 22-year sentence read in a monotone by a judge who has seen it all before. And that's what makes it real. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Brianna drove south on I-95. Windows down, late afternoon sun cutting through the trees, the kind of golden light that makes Virginia look like a painting. She hadn't taken a day off in 5 months. Her supervisor had to practically order her out of the building. She pulled into a quiet neighborhood in Richmond. Small houses, chain-link fences, lawns that were more dandelion than grass, kids riding bikes in the street, the smell of someone's grill going, charcoal and hickory smoke drifting through the air. Her mother's house hadn't changed. Same brick steps, same screen door with the loose hinge, same ceramic frog sitting next to the welcome mat that said, "Bless this mess." Lorraine Moore was on the porch. Rocking chair, glass of sweet tea, a crossword puzzle book open on her lap. She looked up when Brianna's car pulled in. She didn't wave. She just watched her daughter walk up the steps and sit down in the empty chair beside her. They sat in silence for a long time. The creak of the rocking chairs, the hum of cicadas, a neighbor's dog barking somewhere down the block. Lorraine spoke first. "That was you, wasn't it?" Brianna looked at her mother. Lorraine's eyes were soft, knowing. She had seen the news. She had seen the blurry video of a woman in a black t-shirt walking through a ballroom with a gold badge on her hip. A mother knows her daughter's walk. Brianna nodded. Lorraine reached over and took her daughter's hand. Her fingers were warm, rough from years of chalk dust and dish soap. She squeezed once. Firm.
I told you, you don't owe anybody your dignity. She paused. A small smile crossed her lips. But Lord, baby, you sure made him owe you his. Brianna laughed. For the first time in months, a real laugh. Not the polite kind she used at the office, not the controlled kind she used undercover. A laugh that came from somewhere deep and true. It echoed off the porch ceiling and disappeared into the evening air. They sat together until the sun went down. Sweet tea and silence and the sound of rocking chairs. That was enough.
Lorraine didn't ask about the case. Didn't ask about the trial. Didn't ask what it felt like to stand in a room full of people who treated her daughter like she was less than nothing. She didn't need to. She'd been a black woman in America for 63 years. She already knew. Before Brianna left that night, Lorraine walked her to the car. She held her daughter's face in both hands, the way she used to when Brianna was small and scared of thunderstorms. You did something important, but don't let it harden you. You hear me? The world needs people who fight and still feel. Brianna kissed her mother's palm. I hear you, Mama. She drove back to Virginia with the windows down and the radio off. Just the sound of the highway and her own breathing. Monday morning, Brianna was back at the bureau. Same desk, same fluorescent lights, same coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during the last administration. She hung her jacket on the back of her chair and sat down. A new case file sat on her keyboard. Manila folder, red tab. She opened it. Scanned the first page. Financial irregularities at a pharmaceutical company. Offshore accounts. Whistleblower complaint. She smiled, just slightly, a small pull at the corner of her mouth. Then she picked up her pen, opened her notebook, and started reading. The cycle begins again. Quiet, competent, underestimated, unstoppable. The narrator pauses. Brianna Moore never raised her voice. Not once. Not when Preston called her an animal. Not when he shoved a dessert tray into her chest. Not when security guards stood in her face demanding to search her bag. She never lost her composure. She never gave him the satisfaction. Her power was not volume. It was preparation, patience, and the law. Preston Caldwell had money, influence, connections. 300 people in a ballroom who would rather look at their shoes than speak up. He had every advantage the world could offer, and none of it mattered. Because the truth doesn't care about your net worth. The law doesn't care about your guest list. And the woman you dismiss as beneath you might be the one building the case that ends everything you built. Underestimating someone because of their race is not just morally wrong. It is strategically catastrophic.